there's 3 games we really got to talk about left, and these are the big boy ball games. These are the ones that are going to be contenders. Chris, you want to get us started with what your number 3 was? Well, you had Alabama, Florida State number 3, but what was of these 3? What did you have at the bottom of that list?
I had this is my number 4. I think you guys had it higher. Notre Dame at Miami. Similarly, in a spot where both of these teams, it feels like you can't lose this game to start it off. Miami, disappointing finish to last year, but again, playoff is kind of your expectation. Notre Dame's coming off of the championship appearance. And you just got questions on both sides. Is Carson Beck ready? How is the arm post-surgery coming back? Who is the quarterback at Notre Dame? Is it CJ Carr? 2 teams with high expectations for next year, but also huge questions. And we can have a little fun with a Catholic convicts look back.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I'm with you on this. I think the Carson Beck piece is the most interesting piece of this game. Obviously Notre Dame has a quarterback question there. We'll see. I think my money would be on CJ Carr, but been wrong before. No Al Golden return to Miami here. I'm sad to see that, but.
Yes. I didn't even think of that.
Yes.
I knew Al Golden's not coming back to Notre Dame, obviously, because he went to the Bengals. But yeah, this would have been Al Golden returning to Miami. I think Al Golden got a
assistant coach ever worn a tie? I'd like to see that.
I do think Golden got a pretty bad rap at Miami because they get hit with those NCAA sanctions after he comes in. I think he was kind of given the runaround on how that was going to go. And given the difficult situation he was put in, I think he did the best he could. Ubben, do you remember the Al Golden era down there, sweating through those dress shirts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was covering the Big 12 at the time, so I don't think I watched them super closely. But it just seemed like, when I grew up, like the expectations for Miami were so big, and I think like knowing more and learning how college football works and like all those factors, it's a lot harder to win at Miami than people think it is. I think Jimmy Johnson and Larry Coker and Butch Davis and all those guys made it look a lot easier than it actually is. I think so. So we'll see. Steve Angeli, by the way, you saw him in the Ohio State game, the Penn State game, when Riley Leonard went out, kind of keeping them above water. He'll be also competing for that job. We'll see. I think I'd still bet on CJ Carr, but I liked what I saw from Steve Angeli in that ball game. Dame, some Southern flavor in your number 3 game. What do you got for us?
LSU and Clemson, man. Like Dabo Swinney, Brian Kelly, Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier. Like I think this just has potential to be a great matchup. I've always wondered what's the real Death Valley here. Like obviously I played in LSU and I have experience in that Death Valley, but I've also had my run-ins with Clemson and who is the real Death Valley, the real Tigers here? I don't know. I think it could be a really exciting matchup. I think it's going to be hopefully well coached, well played. I think we're going to see some great quarterback play, and those are 2 guys that are going to look to have their names at the top of the draft board at the quarterback position. So I think it'll be an exciting matchup.
Yeah, last year was the first year that we really kind of started paying attention to and talking about this weird run that LSU has in week 1 games.
Mm-hmm.
The Mississippi State game was like a weird. Mike Leach is in the SEC now. We don't know that you can't play man on mesh, but we're going to run it 10,000 times and not figure it out.
Pelini.
Shout out to Bo Pelini. That was a rough one. Yeah, like the UCLA losses, the Florida State losses were both kind of weird. Last year, USC, that loss did not age well at all. But losing 5 week 1s in a row, I know they're all against pretty good opponents, but you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball to start the season if you're LSU, and it felt like they were kind of working to get back. They kind of peak with that Ole Miss win and then kind of fell off there toward the end. But I like this LSU team. I think, again, continuity reigns. Keeping your coordinators. I think Blake Baker is sitting there in year 2 will be better. They got some still decent personnel. They kill it in the portal. I think they've got the number 1 portal class. I believe that's right. And LSU seems like they're sort of getting their NIL game in. I like LSU in this game. I think we're going to learn a lot about the Tigers here and whether or not we have to take Clemson seriously.
A question for both of you. If this is a lopsided game and Clemson just beats the hell out of LSU, how early do we start the Brian Kelly hot seat conversation? Can I
start that night?
Because I already have it. Like I already want to have that conversation. But if this is an ugly game, Chris, do you think that we're going straight to week 2, straight that night, like he is on the hot seat and it's getting hotter every week.
Oh yeah, I mean the last time that LSU won in week 1, Joe Burrow was the quarterback. like that. That's how long it's been, and this is why some schools don't like to do the big week 1 game because you can set yourself behind. And LSU, credit to LSU for continuing to schedule these games and knowing what it means and how it's beneficial to the sport and everything. You're just going to have to get one of these to go your way. Going on the road to Clemson is not a great start. I'm pretty high on Clemson next year. I think they can fix the defense. They got a couple of guys in the portal. You brought Tom Allen in to be your defense coordinator. And I really like those wide receivers, the young receivers with Cade Klubnik. So if not for the number 1 game on our list, this would be the clear number 1 game, I think, LSU Clemson. Like this is a big one between 2 teams with playoff and national championship hopes. That's what we like in week 1. Like, yes, both teams can still make the playoff if they lose this game, but whoever loses this game is going to be pretty devastated to start 0-1. And that's why it's
Number 1 on all of our lists, the Arch Manning era starts against the reigning national champions. Man, like, what are the ratings going to be for this game? This is going to be
the
crazy.
Texas stock.
This game is going to do stupid ratings. Like, this is going to be wild. I really cannot wait for this game. You know, I think both these teams will be fine. This is the one where like people will watch, and like the loser, I think the narrative will still be like, but they can still get to the playoff. Is that good or bad for the sport? I don't know. But during the game, I'm not going to be thinking about that. I'm going to be thinking about there's a lot of talent on this field, and I am excited to watch this football game.
What do you guys think is the X factor? Like, obviously, there's a ton of things that we can sit here and be like, I'm excited for this, I'm excited for that, I want to see Arch, like all these different things. Like, what do you think is going to be the X factor of this game? Like the one thing, I don't want to say that people aren't paying attention to, but just outside of the main storyline, what do you think it's going to take for one of these teams to win?
Well, I think Texas has built up their lines of scrimmage better. So it's a question of, like, can you win the line of scrimmage? If you do that, you know, you win this ball game. Like, for all the noise that Ohio State's going to make with the receivers and the quarterback stuff, like, Texas, what they've done on their lines of scrimmage has been really, really impressive. And the way they've been able to reboot and still be a team that is winning games up front. If you can keep doing that, I think that to me is the thing that decides this game, and that everybody's going to be talking about Arch, talking about Jeremiah Smith and all this stuff. Like, the uglies are going to decide this game.
There are 2 things I think about with this game. One is the 2005 classic between Texas and Ohio State and Columbus. Vince Young throwing it up to Limas Swede in the end zone, that falling back, that classic ESPN shot, falling back in the end zone, making the catch to win the game late. That game sent Texas on the path to win the national championship that year behind Vince Young. So I'm thinking about that. I looked up what Limas Swede, tried to look up what Limas Swede is doing. He didn't play much in the NFL and the CFL.
Yeah, he was with the Steelers for a little bit. I remember him in college, and I just remember thinking, like, I didn't realize receivers could be that big. Like, I remember watching him and just being like, oh my gosh, this guy's like a giant. This is crazy. And then Roy Williams came right behind him, didn't he? I think that's
right. I don't remember the order between those two, but
the timing is complicated.
Like
but I remember Limas Swede. I distinctly remember thinking, like, this guy is a gigantic person. I didn't realize receivers could be 6'5", 220 or whatever.
And then the other thing I'm thinking, this game is at Ohio State, which means there's a pretty good chance, I think, that it's going to be big noon, because this is probably a game Fox is going to want to grab, because Fox grabs Ohio State, Michigan. This is probably your number 2 Big Ten home game of the year. And if that happens, Ohio State fans who are furious about all the big noon games they got last year, probably not going to love that this would be a big noon game as well. But that's what the money's for.
Is there a way to blot out the sun and play it under the lights anyway? Can we do that? I mean, I think it's my vote. That's lame.
I don't know if there's any dome stadium, so